Hi, everyone. My name's Chris Liu, and on behalf of San Mateo County Libraries, I want to thank you for joining us in our second of a two-part series brought to you by JobTrain. This session is going to be focused on interview preparation. Our presenters today, Ruben Avalar and Lilian Castellanos, are representatives of JobTrain, and it is a fantastic nonprofit that combines vocational training, academics, and essential skill development, preparing community members for success and self-sufficiency. Periodically during this presentation, we're going to pause and allow you space to ask some questions. You can locate the Q&A tab on the menu at the bottom right of your Zoom window. And please ask your questions as they come to mind, and then we'll get to them when we hit that natural stopping point. The session is also being offered in both English and Spanish, and you can set your language preference by going to the interpretation feature down on the bottom right of the Zoom call menu. So with that, I will turn it over to JobTrain's Director of Career Center Services, Mr. Ruben Avalar.
Thank you for that introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ruben Avalar, and I'm excited to present to you a workshop on Interviewing 101. The information I'm going to share with you today will help you improve your interviewing skills and preparation for interviews, as well as provide you helpful hints and recommendations on what you can do for that next interview that you have. So I want to just quickly go through what I plan to cover today. We'll talk about pre-interview activities as well as the preparation element. What are the pieces you have to kind of anticipate to prepare before the interview. Very important that you do your homework on employers and the positions, so you're knowledgeable about employers, and we'll talk about that too. Practice is highly recommended. Doing mock interviews with people you know. Dressing for success. I know we live in this virtual world now, and I'm learning more and more that a lot of people who work from home only dress from the top up, and we're going to suggest when you go to interviews that you dress from head to toe. We'll talk about the things you need to be mindful of on interview day, also things you need to be mindful of after post-interview activities. What should you be doing after the interview is completed? We'll talk about the importance of reviewing and evaluating your interview and learning from your lessons learned from your mistakes and so forth. So with that, I want to begin. So looking for work is work. It's a full-time job. You have to devote the time, effort, resources, and attention to looking for work. If you want to, reap the benefits of your efforts to find employment. But interesting enough that only 10% of the jobs are advertised out there, and 90% of the people go out there and look for those jobs. So that's really not in your favor. You have to kind of be creative. She's put it up. Oh. Okay. All right. Something's wrong here. Technical. Let's see. Can you see my slides, Steve?
Not presently, Ruben, no.
Oh, what happened there? That's interesting. Okay, let's try it again. I thought I had it up. I'm sorry. All right, let's see here. Bring this down. Okay. All right. I think part of the problem is I don't have video. Oh, there it is. Now I have it. Okay. I had it up. I don't know why I didn't show. Okay. Now you can see it. So
Yes, we're in business.
sorry, very technical difficulty. Okay, come on, get out of the way. Okay. All right. There we go. So as I mentioned a moment ago, that only 10% of the jobs out there are ever advertised. So the majority of people are focusing their job search attention on those 10%. And we have to be more creative in how we go about looking for work. Looking at networking, looking at other means of outreach to employers to discover the hidden job market. So we'll talk about that a little bit later, but let's talk about a few other things we need to be mindful of as we talk about interviewing. There are elements in interviewing that you control. and they're primarily packaging, communication, preparation, and dressing for success. Those are the key core 4 elements that are important, that you have a tremendous amount of control over and influence in regards to how successful you are in looking for work. So when we talk about packaging, you're looking at, how, are you dressed for success? Are you wearing the appropriate wardrobe for the interview? The other piece has to do with your resume. How well does, put together is your resume? Does it, explain very clearly your interests and your experience and your background, and how you meet the qualifications for the job? And then, the other piece is your interview responses. Are you ready to, present with enthusiasm and excitement your interest in a job, which is all about communication. There are 3 components to communication. One is your body language, voice tonality, and your excuse me, and your word use, and your level of confidence. All those are elements that you control in regards to how you convey your messaging to the employer. The other big thing is, plan, prepare, and practice. You want to be able to, have in mind the fundamental concept of what you would like to share with an employer, and you develop that by practicing and preparing yourself as to how you want to answer those questions. I think it's important that you take the time and you rehearse and you feel comfortable with the information you want to share with an employer. Will help you develop that confidence you need to be able to articulate those elements that are important to share with an employer. Dressing for success. I emphasize in my workshops the importance of dressing from head to toe. If you dress nice, you feel good. I mean, it just gives you a different energy level when you're dressed from head to toe for success. And so I encourage people who are in job search, and in this day and age, it's a lot of virtual interviews, that you take it serious and take it as if it's a actual face-to-face interview, and approach it in that manner. Body language, we talk about the importance of that. Your posture while you're sitting in the interview, your eye contact is really, really important. And again, interviewing from home, has a psychological disadvantage, because you think, you feel you're at home. You got this home feeling around you. You want to, you get comfortable, you get relaxed. And sometimes you tend to get too relaxed and slouch in your comfy chair. And you got to kind of keep in mind, just remove yourself from that element of, I'm at home, and, I can relax a little bit subconsciously. You tell yourself that, realize I'm in an interview, and I got to maintain, my focus and attention on what is being asked of me in my interaction with the employer. The big thing I promote is being able to psych yourself up for an interview. In anticipation of an interview, you want to not think about, the day-to-day pressures of life, like having to pay the PG&E bill, or picking up the children from the daycare center this afternoon. You don't want to think about those things. You want to, reduce all those elements from your mind, eliminate them, reduce stress, any anxiety that you may have regarding interviewing, sort of reroute that energy. Basically kind of focus on building your confidence and kind of developing that I got this attitude. I'm gonna do well in this interview today. I've practiced, I'm prepared, I've reviewed the job description. I definitely can relate to my information on my resume to share with an employer. I got some good solid answers. So you put all that together, it sort of contributes to your level of confidence that you need to go forward with an interview. First impressions are everything. And again, even with virtual interviews, employers are going to draw judgment, on their first impression about you, and you'll probably draw judgment on an employer as well too, the moment you sit down in front of the computer and begin your virtual interview. The first 10 seconds, the first 10 words spoken will set the tone of how an employer feels about you. You want to take command at that moment. You want to walk in and sit down with confidence. You want to be able to, be very formal and organized in how you introduce yourself to the employer. And a lot of times, the employer will ask you some icebreaker questions. So, how's your day going? How's the weather out there? Just kind of help you settle down, catch your breath. And it also helps the employer settle down, capture, I guess, catch his breath as well. So it's a very awkward sort of arrangement. The employer, is that slightly apprehensive too. He doesn't know what kind of candidate you are for the position. So, and you don't know the types of questions he's going to ask you. So it's a very awkward in that, not too sure where this is going to go and how it's going to work out. But it's to your advantage to kind of settle down, focus your attention, and proceed to take command of the interview at the moment. When we talk about dressing for success, I said head to toe. It's important that you understand the value in that and how psychologically that will make you feel I guess, in anticipation of the interview. And I'll stop there if there are any questions at this time.
Yeah, so there actually is a question. I think it's kind of related to this topic. When interviewing for a fast food chain or restaurant position, what would you feel kind of would be appropriate attire? They're asking if a suit and tie would be too much specifically.
Yeah, one of the things I say in my workshops is kind of dress one or two levels above the job that you're applying for. If you're not too sure, well, how do they dress for this job? I usually recommend we'll go to the work site and observe how people dress, but that sort of doesn't work in this day and age because a lot of high-tech jobs, you find these techies who are very casual. They come in t-shirts and Levi's and loafers and things like that. But I would say for if you're applying for a fast food job, I would say a shirt with a collar, a pair of khaki pants, or belt, clearly not necessarily a tie, but look good. Feel comfortable in what you're wearing. Also take care of your physical appearance, like your hair, shave. Make sure your hair's combed and presentable. You're working in food. Clearly, having long hair is to your disadvantage because there's that health issues around. Keeping your hair away from food, but dress up, appropriately. A suit would be overkill. A tie might be overkill in a fast food restaurant, but look like you realize the importance of the moment. You want to dress and let the employer know I take this interview serious. I took the time to put on some better clothes, and I'm here to apply for this job. I think they appreciate that when people do take the time to do that.
All right, that's the only question we have at this time.
Okay. So when you talk about your resume, we have two examples here. The one that's all in red, that's a terrible resume. They kind of cover all the things that are terrible about it. Too much white space at the top of the page, poor use of objective line, and just goes on and on. The one that I always say is a big no-no with resumes is putting down the year that you graduated. It's not good, especially if years have gone by since you graduated from school. And then also putting references available upon request at the bottom is also not necessary either. The resume that says Jane Doe is a little bit more structured, better, has more of a user-friendly type of appearance. Provides contact information on top. It spells out very clearly what the individual's coming with and what kind of job they're interested in applying for, and it highlights their skills and qualifications separately, and then their professional work experience is done in reverse chronological order, with their education at the very bottom with no year that they graduated. So well put together. It's more appeasing to the employer's eye. And again, you control how your resume looks. When you think about things you control, this is one of those elements. You control the way you design your resume. You control how you put the information on your resume. And in my resume workshop, I talk about being strategic in how you structure your resume, using key words that are desired by the employer to see on your resume when he's reviewing your resume. If you're not too sure of those words to use, then pull the job description and use that as a guide to maybe use some of the wordage in there to incorporate into your resume. So again, first impression, the first 10 seconds, the first 10 words, when you introduce yourself, by all means, if you have the employer's name, use it. Good afternoon, Mr. Smith. I'm very excited to be here for this interview for the store manager position. Since things are virtual now, there's no handshaking, but just again, be polite, be formal, use Mr. and Mrs. that appropriately, unless they specify. Please don't call me Mr. Smith, call me Larry. Then you would factor that in. Again, sitting with erect in your seat, maintaining eye contact, showing interest by nodding your head, by smiling is really, really important as well in the interview. If you're doing a virtual interview and you have a panel, 3 people interviewing you, try to make an attempt to make eye contact with each one of them, acknowledging them as well. At the end of the interview, by all means, use the employer's name, thank them for the opportunity for the interview, and end with something meaningful. And this is an example. You can kind of create something your own, customize it as you see fit, but fundamentally, thank the employer for taking the time to interview you. Let them know that you are excited about the possibility of joining their team and you're looking forward to hear from them soon. Is a good way to always end an interview with a nice, solid closing statement. It sort of like puts the accent mark at the end of an interview. Here are just a sample of interview questions. I sort of whittled it down a little bit because there are lots of interview questions out there. There's tons of them on the internet. Just put down examples of interview questions and then go to images and you'll just get overwhelmed with the kinds of questions that employers ask. It's important to kind of go through the interview questions because they're pretty much fundamentally the same. They want you to talk about yourself. And you need to kind of elaborate, substantiate, and support what you say about yourself. You just can't just respond with one word and say, "Oh, I'm very responsible." That's a quality I have. Employers want to see examples. They want to hear you illustrate where have you demonstrated being responsible in the past. So that's why it's important to rehearse, to go through mock interviews with people to figure out, okay, how am I going to substantiate this statement? How would I answer this to give the employer a clear example of what I mean about my level of responsibility? So one of those simple things that I tell job seekers all the time, when you're asked a question, use the word because. And so when someone asks you, so what's one of your strengths? You could say, oh, I am very responsible because in my last job at ABC company, I was responsible for overseeing monthly sales and processing them. And I made sure that I was on time and completed my job duties as required by my supervisor. That's demonstrating an illustration of you being responsible. So whenever you have a chance, try to give an example to an employer. Is really, really important because it lets the employer know how you recognize where you demonstrated being responsible. And it sort of gives the employer a more detailed description about your qualifications and you displaying that level of responsibility in a previous job. Now, when you start an interview, a lot of times an employer will start with this one here, this question. So, Ruben, why don't you start off by telling me something about yourself? And that's probably the only open-ended question that an employer will ask a job seeker. The rest of the interview questions, are very, specific. Tell me what's one of your strengths. If I called your last employer, what would he say about you? They're asking, to solicit specific information about, a workability or an experience or an example. Whereas this one, tell me about yourself, can go virtually anywhere, and it enables you to sort of talk about yourself, which in turn kind of, you feel comfortable talking about yourself, and it's sort of like an icebreaker. It helps you settle down before the interview starts. And a lot of times people feel like it's a trap to set you up because it's sort of open-ended. You can talk about your personal life, you can talk about hobbies. You can talk about a lot of different things. It doesn't really give you any structure or guidance as to what you should cover. And but I think that the main thing here is it gives you an opportunity to give an employer an insight about your background that's not reflected in your resume or your cover letter. It's an opportunity to share a little bit more information about yourself that wouldn't be obvious on your resume. And so again, this is something you want to anticipate in an interview, that potentially they might ask you this question. So always kind of have a structure designed of what you'd like to cover if you were asked this interview. So let's talk about a little bit about the things you can share with an employer when asked, why don't you start by telling me something about yourself? So you want to talk about maybe the 3 most important qualities that you have for a job. Okay, begin your answer by stating that you have these qualities. For example, if it's a sales job, the most important qualities that they are looking for might be the ability to communicate well with people, the ability to set goals and stay on track, and the ability to work on a team. So if you're saying, okay, so these are the 3 qualities, that I think are important in this job, that I had in the past, I could say, well, in my last job, when I worked as a sales rep at the ABC company, I had excellent customer service skills, which allowed me to interact well with people, and I was able to increase sales by 10%. That's something that you can, again, accentuate, highlight this point in more finer detail that maybe on your resume, it wouldn't be as clear or detailed. So here's the opportunity to sort of like, hit that home run with an employer by sharing something that isn't anywhere on your resume. And I think it's a good opportunity to do that as well. You can say where you last worked, or say the job that was most relevant to the position that you're applying for, and pick 1 or 2 things that you achieved in that job. For example, I worked as a sales rep at the ABC company, and I was their top salesman for 3 years running. Last year, I sold over $1 million worth of widgets. Okay, so again, highlighting an accomplishment, highlighting something that you did well in your previous job is a good thing. Ringing your own bell, I call it. It's important that you do that when interviewing, that you acknowledge these things that were meaningful and eventful in your career. Or you can talk about why you want to work for that company. Describe specific knowledge about that industry and the company that you're applying for. Again, it's showing enthusiasm about the opportunity to be employed with this company. So the example would be, I want to work in the pharmaceutical sales because it's an area where I can use my ability to create solid long-term relationships with clients. I want to work at your company in particular because your focus is on treatment drugs, which is an area that is growing by the rate of 20% a year. This gives you a solid base for which to introduce new products, and I like to be a part of that team. So again, doing your homework is really important on the employer, because it gives you ammunition to put in answers like this to share with an employer. An employer likes to hear you talk about them. They recognize, hey, this person took an extra step. This person researched my company. That's great. I like that. This person is a go-getter. I need that kind of attitude in my company for this position. So doing your homework will pay off, and it's places like this, it's places in your interview that you can share the information that you discovered about the employer in your answers in an interview. Any questions?
No new questions at this time. I will just take this opportunity to point out the Q&A down at the bottom of the screen, just in case someone has a question, but they don't know how to ask it. It's if you go down to the bottom of the window, you'll see the Q&A section. So feel free to submit your questions there.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Okay, so let's talk about online interviewing. And again, this is going to be around virtual interviewing for a while, at least maybe a year more, I'm guessing. And so we might as well get used to, this whole process and the experience and things that we need to do to enhance our chances of becoming employed. So these are just suggestions that when you're doing a virtual interview, look directly to the camera, not at the screen or monitor, to make good eye contact. Don't be afraid to ask questions, to ask for a question to be repeated, even if you have not heard it properly. It is better to clarify, and that's correct. A lot of times, internet connections will get broken up. and you might miss part of the question on your side. So I think it's okay to ask the employer, can you please repeat the question? I kind of want to be sure I got it right. Okay. The sound system can be less than perfect, so speak clearly and avoid mumbling or rushing your words. There's a delay, and so you want to make sure that the employer is done asking the question before you jump in. So there's a time delay between the employer speaking to you and he being able to respond to what you're saying, or you being able to respond to what he's saying. So just make sure that you give yourself that space between question and answer. And I like to always suggest this as well as a side note when you're interviewing, that it's normally okay to have a pause between a question and an answer. The pause to me lets the employer know that you're thinking, that you're analyzing what to say and how to say it, and you just need that moment to process your answer before you belt it out. I think it's to your disadvantage that you jump right in with an answer as soon as the employer asks a question. So give yourself a moment to process the question and then formulate your answer is okay. A couple of seconds is not going to matter much in between question and answer, but I think employers will pick up that you have a thought process in which you want to take the time to formulate your answer before you just belt out an answer. Okay, did I cover everything? Let me see. Okay, no, I did not. Okay, the other thing is beware of facial expressions and posture. Again, you're at home and that could play tricks on you because you're at the comfort of your home, and psychologically you may, or subconsciously you may think, oh, I'm at home, and you do things, not really thinking about it. So be mindful of that kind of those facial expressions that you make, or your posture, or just getting distracted by something happening on the other side of the room that you're in. So be mindful of that. Okay, and then like I mentioned a moment ago, pause before answering the question. It's really important. Okay, so let's talk about your posture, sitting. I would say get a kitchen chair or a dining room chair with something that doesn't have any wheels, or the back gives to pressure, or it's really comfortable. Get something that makes you sit erect in your chair. Put your legs together and put your feet beneath the chair as much as possible, because that prevents you from slouching. And sit up straight with a slight lean forward. A slight lean forward also is another way to demonstrate interest. Okay. Again, when the employer is talking to you, you lean in, you shake your head, you smile. That's really important to kind of like share with an employer, because that acknowledges that you are understanding and relating to the employer with the questions he's asking. And at the same time, it makes the interview more comfortable for you and the employer as you acknowledge that you're paying attention to them. In regards to the red, taking the seat before it is offered to you, that's in a person-to-person interview. If you ever have a person-to-person interview, that's important as well, that you don't just sit down as soon as you walk in, that you introduce yourself to the employer, then the employer says, please, Ruben, have a seat, and then you proceed to sit down. Wiggling is also something you do out of nervousness subconsciously, so be mindful of what you do. When I get a real nervous, I tend to use my hands a lot. So just try to be conscientious of those things, those small things that you do in an interview. Nervous movements, like maybe you tend to bring your hand up a lot, rub your face. They don't see a lot of you. It's from like mid chest up they see, but still you can kind of do things like this, that just nervous movement. So just sort of be conscientious of those things and try to allow them not to happen in your interview. Now, behavioral interviews, I want to share this with you because a moment ago I talked about using the word because. I am responsible because when I worked for, that kind of thing is an example of how you can substantiate a qualification, a quality that you have, and how you relate it to a job you had in the past. Behavioral interviews are more in depth in what an employer is looking for. Behavioral interview questions are designed around the employer soliciting a story from you where you displayed a high level of responsibility. They want you to walk you through this story. Now, behavioral interview questions are designed that you can't lie. If you've never done it before, how can you quickly fabricate a story where you use that strength or that ability in getting a job done in a previous position? So you have to, you have to have experienced that in order to provide an answer, a behavioral interview answer. So these are some of the things that they recommend. Use specific and relevant examples that clearly demonstrate the required behavior. Use recent behavior examples to support your interview answer. Follow the STAR steps, and I'll elaborate on what the STAR acronym is in your behavioral answers. Oh, here it is here. Situation, task, action, result. And that's a format that I recommend in designing a response for a behavioral interview question. Situation, task, action, result. Stick to the facts, as follow-up questions will soon expose any exaggerations or false answers. So don't, inflate things that you did or didn't do, because, again, employers may want a follow-up question, or it might not come across credible sometimes when you're not actually, being truthful just in the way in which you are communicating to an employer with your body language, or how you might be, stammering or stumbling with being able to find the words to share with an employer. And here are two examples of behavioral interview types of questions. Describe a time when you faced a conflict while working with another coworker on a team. How did you handle it? Okay, you just can't use one word to answer this question. It is a story. And so you have to kind of walk and throw an employer through that process. What were the steps you took? What were the results, and what did you learn from it? Okay, that's kind of what they're looking for. So that question has multiple layers, and it may take a few minutes to answer. Tell me about a time when you had to work with a coworker whose personality was very different from yours. Again, it's a more in-depth story. And what I recommend to job seekers is that you should have at least 3 to 4 behavioral interview type of answers in anticipation for an employer to ask you a question. The one I hear a lot is, please tell me about a time when you had to take on a project that you didn't have all the facts to proceed with it. What did you do? What were the results? And what did you learn from it? So there's like 3 or 4 different levels of questions that an employer is asking you. So you have to kind of figure out, okay, how am I going to answer this? Again, if you rehearse this at home, these are my 4 behavioral interview responses that I'm going to share with an employer. You can go into the interview in anticipation that you may use them or may not. But to have them is always important. Now, STAR. A STAR is an acronym. It represents situation, action, task, results. So the situation would be describing an example of a situation where you were involved in that resulted in a positive outcome. Did you have to be the interim manager of the warehouse for 3 months unexpectedly? What did you do? The next piece is, what did you do? The action you took, to take on the new role or responsibilities that were put upon you. Task, describe the tasks that were involved, that you have to coordinate with the other floor managers, that you have to meet with the team, that you have to do monthly report. What did you have to do? Highlight some of those high level things that you did as a part of this situation that you're describing to an employer. And the results, what was the outcome of the job you took on? Did it improve employee relationships? Was productivity impacted in a positive way as a result of you becoming a new manager? What were the things that came out of you taking on this responsibility? So again, it's this is commonly used more and more on interviews. I think more along the lines as you become more manager or mid-manager, or along those lines, supervisor. These are the kind of questions they'll ask you to make sure that you have the qualifications for the job, because the whole premise is, if you are able to illustrate these high quality levels over here and explain them to us, and in your answer, you possess these qualities that are going to come with you into this new job. So they're not going to go away because you went from one job to the other. It tells a lot to an employer about your level of qualifications and skills and ability to complete projects. And so employers like to hear behavioral interview answers. Any questions?
Yeah, we have a couple of questions. So the first one's going to be, I'm assuming that this is the first interview, but it didn't specify. Is it too abrupt in a first interview to ask about hourly wages or salary? And is it too abrupt to ask the interviewer what keeps them at the job?
Okay. Salary and benefits is a taboo. It's a big no. Do not bring that up in an interview. Okay. The only time it may become relevant is at the job offer interview. And usually at the job offer interview level or phase, they put the cards on the table. So we're going to pay you. These are the benefits. It's all, it's at that point where they made a decision to hire you. If you bring it up prematurely at the first interview, employers draw an assumption about you. Basically, that assumption is, oh, this person's all about money only. He's applying for the job just to see what's it paying, and he's going to decide, oh, it's not enough, he's going to walk away. And so you should never bring it up in the early stages, because you want, and may sound kind of odd, you want the employer to know, hey, I really want this job. It's not about money, it's about me being able to have the opportunity to join your team and grow and learn from this opportunity. So that's kind of the mindset of employers. You start talking about money, you don't really want to do this job. You're looking for a good paying job. So never bring it up in the initial interview. Now, if the employer asks you, may I ask, what did you make in your last job per hour? Clearly, you have to answer what the employer asks you. That it's his ball game. So, I usually recommend that people say, well, I made, $15.50 an hour in my last job, but I'm willing to, I'm not set in that. I think if offered the job, I'd like to see if we could talk more about negotiating that. I feel I come with, and then you start selling your highlights. I come with the following skills that are going to be valuable, in this position, and you just name them off. And you always are promoting yourself and the skills and knowledge and experience you have to justify why you are a good candidate for this job. When they make that job offer, there's no harm in saying, I appreciate, the job offer of $20.50 an hour. I want to ask you, Mr. Smith, is it possible we could maybe discuss, negotiating this hourly rate? I have 3 years experience working in this field. I also have management experience as well. And so there's where, you start to see if it's negotiable, and if it's not, then you could say, I always tell people that at that point you can ask, when performance reviews take place, is it something that we can explore? Since I'm a new employee, and discuss, my wages at that time if I achieve all your expectations. You can ask those kind of questions at that point, because at that point the ball is in your court when they're making a job offer. And if you say, oh, it's not, you leave the interview or the job offer and you say, let me think about it. You have to kind of make, a big decision, because, getting a job is a life-altering event, right? It changes your life completely. You got to, get on the bus, figure out the bus schedule, do this, do that, get someone to watch your kid, do that, do this. So things change once you get that job. And so you have to ask yourself, are the wages worth, me, taking this job or not? And if you're in job search mode, I think there's nothing wrong in you weighing out your options. And if you've done interviewing, several times, to wait and see if there's any other job offers coming. But I kind of went down a path with the wages, but the main thing is you should never bring it up here at the early stages of the game. Now, the other thing you can do is you can do your homework. You can find out what before applying for that particular job, what that industry or those types of positions pay. You can research that, and then that could prevent you from applying for a job that might be paying too little and not enough for your livelihood. So it's just being a smart job seeker is going to be really, really important, and just staying away from that conversation early in the game will also be to your advantage as well. Okay.
All right. We have another question.
Sure.
About your thoughts on informational interviews. Someone's thinking specifically about a career change, and they wanted to know, should they follow their heart and apply for a new position with little experience for that job, and maybe try and compensate for that lack of experience by expressing how eager they are to learn and their excitement for that position?
Okay. That's an interesting question. I would say there's nothing wrong with informational interviews. And I'm going to talk about that when we get to the point where we're talking about networking. In this day and age, it's kind of hard to reach out to people because of COVID, but you could still do phone calls, you could still do video conferencing. Doing informational interviews with people who work in the industry that you want to get into is really important, because it's also it's subsidizing or supplementing your network. As you reach out to people in the industry and you say, hey, I'm looking at jumping into the widget industry. I understand, you're an expert in the widget industry. I want to know, I can talk to you about what's it like, what did it take for you to enter the industry, and ask you a few questions. Can can we work out a half hour sometime in the next week to talk? And when you talk to them, you listen and you gain a lot of inside information, and you never want to leave an informational interview with just acknowledging that representative by saying, thank you very much, I appreciate you taking the time. No, what you want to do is tell the interviewer, well, I appreciate you talking to me. Can I send you my resume? Can I get back to you in a month or so to kind of let you know where I'm at in my job search? Can you point me to somebody else that you know in the industry that I can talk to, or who has potentially maybe an opportunity for me to apply for a job? You want to just keep probing. Once you make that contact with somebody, you want to be gently persistent with them to see if they can take you to the next level, provide you another contact, provide you another insight. So information interviews are very powerful, and they're hard to get, but if you can get them, by all means, take advantage of them. You can find out about individuals in a specific industry by looking into associations. There are professional associations out there. There's professional clubs out there as well that relate to a particular career or job, and you can tap into that to get contacts through there. You can do a word query in LinkedIn and see who is in that industry that you could reach out to connect with on your LinkedIn account, and then get that informational interview. So there's a lot of ways that you can do this. You just have to be very, very creative and very insistent on not, just going past the informational interview, asking for more connection, another opportunity to talk to the person as well. Now, when you talk about transferable skills and going into a new industry, it isn't impossible. You just have to do a very good job of assessing your transferable skills. The average American worker changes careers about at least 4 to 5 times in a lifetime. So changing careers is not uncommon, and people change careers for a lot of different reasons. Industries dry up, you burn out, it's just your life changes. A lot of different things cause people to look at other types of jobs. If you are looking at another career pathway, then you may have to do a comprehensive skills experience assessment and ask yourself, where else can these skills and abilities that I have be used in what other industry? And then start kind of seeing how they fit. There are a lot of good tools out there that can help you do that as well on the internet. These are surveys and questionnaires that you can fill out, and they can tell you where your highest interests are. That could be your next potential career pathway. There's one called onet.org, I think, onet.org, and it has I think that is what I want to be. I think is the logo that you click on their website, and it's a questionnaire, and it goes from like a lot to dislike a lot, and they'll ask you things like, do you like laying bricks? Do you like building cabinets? Do you like working with people? And it's about 100 questions they ask you, and in the end, it'll categorize your answers to areas of career options. So there's that tool. There's several other tools out there that you can use to kind of help you figure out, where else can you use the skills you have. The other thing I propose to people, that if you are looking at transitioning to a new career in a different industry, that you may want to look at, whether or not you want to make the investment in reinventing yourself or enhancing the skill set you have by going back to school. It depends, where you are in your career. Do you have the time and the bandwidth, as well, and the financial ability to make a commitment to go to school for a year, 2 years to get this credential or the certificate or whatever, that'll legitimize your qualifications to enter a new career. So you have to kind of like weigh it all out. and decide. It should never be on a whim, because that's when we make the worst mistakes. Again, jobs are life-altering events. You have to be very analytical in your approach. You have to be very comprehensive in your approach. You just can't, just just on a drop of a dime, just start to pursue something, and then later on you regret that you did it and it's not what you wanted to do in the first place. Get a lot of information. Do your research is what I recommend you do if you're looking at a new industry. And again, there's a lot of tools out there, onet.org, and the other one is EDD's, Labor Market Information, the Employment Development Department's website. Labor Market Information is another good place. They have a tool there that can help you kind of like look at, what a particular job requires a person to have to qualify to work in the industry as well. Any questions?
That's all the questions for now.
Okay. So what you want to do regarding behavioral interview answers is to avoid these kind of things to say. Using vague terms like usually, sometimes, rather than sticking with the facts. Not being able to give good examples and using words like I believe it is best to, just stating what the experience was and your observations on what took place. And then saying things, that in theory, do you do rather than what you actually did. Like I would have done this if I could do it. Just stick to the facts. If you didn't, in your answer, if you struggle with the outcome and you weren't able to achieve the outcome, I think you should say it to the employer, because they want honesty. They don't want someone to exaggerate the facts or turn around and blame others. They want to be able to see someone with integrity who says, I didn't quite reach the goal for the month. I was 10% short, and I learned from that experience, and it made me a better person. It made me, better at what I do the following month. I exceeded 10% or something like that. You can throw that in there too. So always, it's always good to be honest and sincere and genuine when you're interviewing with employers. They like that. Okay. You should always have at least 2 to 3 questions to ask an employer at the end of an interview. That's really, really important. You never want to walk away when the employer says, well, those are all the questions I have for you, Ruben. Do you have any questions you'd like to ask us? And I turn around and say, nope, I'm done. I'm good. Thank you. No. Here's another opportunity where you can drive your interest, that point with the employer, your level of interest, okay? You can, leave that lasting impression with the employer by the kinds of questions you ask the employer. Now, I say you should have at least 2 or 3 in the back of your mind you want to share with the employer, but there are times, and it's perfectly okay, where in the interview, the kinds of information the employer shared with you make, raise a question in your mind that has to do with what he shared with you. That's perfectly okay. You can, ask that question as it pertains to maybe information he provided you early in the interview. That's fine. But you should always have at least 2 or 3 just basic questions to ask them, like, can you please describe the duties of the job for me? Is this a new position, or am I replacing somebody? And again, the next one is, what are your growth projections for next year? Do your homework. You can actually say, I see your growth projections next year. You're predicting the forecast is 25%. May I ask, what are the strategies you plan to put in place to achieve that goal? Building off of, again, information you get from the employer. I like using what are the next steps in the process, and when should I expect to hear from you in the near future? What are the qualities you're looking for in a candidate that might, that could fill this position? And I like that one too, is because that one you can say, after it gives you, well, we're looking for a candidate that has blah, 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 and this and this and that. And you can say, well, it sounds like I'm the perfect fit for this position. I'd love to, be the person to take on the responsibilities of this new position you have in your company. So I'm excited about that. And always, again, take advantage of those opportunities. You can advocate for yourself, push your interest and enthusiasm onto the employer. So follow up after the interview. Don't just walk away and wait by your computer to expect an email. You should be proactive. As soon as you're done with your interview, send an email thank you card. You can't physically go to the place of employment, hand it to them. So sending an email thank you card is probably, Second best thing you could do. Send it the same day. Don't wait till tomorrow. It's important that you send your thank you card to an employer the same day, because the employer may have interviewed 10, 15 people that day, and he sees an email from you that you're thanking them for the opportunity to interview for the position, and let them know how excited you are about being considered for that job, and let them know, my 5 years of experience makes me qualified to fill the position of the job and exceed your expectations. And if you have any other questions, reach out to me. I'll be more happy to answer any questions you have. And that's it, a real simple thank you card. What you do when you send it, it's sort of like a branding element. It sort of like solidifies your interview, his impression of you, because he's gotten this thank you card after interviewing 15 people. You stand out from the rest of the other 14 job candidates because you sent that thank you card. So by all means, send it as soon as you're done with your interview. It is very impactful. It leaves a lasting impression on an employer. He remembers you. Oh yeah, Ruben, good. Yeah, here's my third interview. Great, good candidate. I like him, and he keeps going. But at least now he has your name and an image of you as well. Notes. It's always good to take notes from your experience with interviews. Always write down what you like, what you didn't like. Maybe maybe suggestions about how to improve responding to an interview question. It's just good to see to write things down, because it enables you to see the progress you make over time in regards to how do you approach your job search and the questions that you're asked in an interview. So taking notes, doing a diary is really, really good. And by all means, again, this is also part of the note taking. Address and correct any mistakes you made. Maybe you got too excited and you spoke too fast. Maybe the example you used was inappropriate. Just kind of catch yourself and say, maybe I'll say it this way next time. It'll be helpful. Interviewing, like your resume, is a work in progress. It is never a product. You will never have the end product. I got this, my interview's fine, I have all the answers. No, it's something that you need to constantly improve on as you go out there and apply for jobs. And then in interviewing also, just remind the employer you have the qualifications. Always take advantage of the opportunity to throw that, one or two sales pitches that you have about your skills, your ability, and your experience. It's really, really important that you always take advantage of each opportunity that you have in your cover letter, in the interview, in the thank you card. Always, have that opportunity to promote yourself. Now, as I said early on, looking for work is work. It's a full-time job. So you deserve a break every now and then. And so I want to propose to you that you take time off, that you do an activity like go running, walk, ride your bike, go dancing, whatever it takes to get your blood going, and take your mind off of the stress of looking for work. If you're not into that, maybe plan a special meal, order a movie. This is ways that you can decompress after looking for work all week. It takes your mind off of job search, and it could very well re-energize you and get you ready for the following week to look for work. You can do a play day, take your family out, go somewhere and do something new and fun. Volunteering is also a good way to take your mind off of the stress of looking for work. You volunteer in a soup kitchen. It definitely puts things in perspective, I think, and kind of makes you realize, there are others that are less fortunate than you that are struggling through life. Buy, look good as well as, and you'll feel good. So go out there, get a haircut, maybe buy a new shirt or a tie to, for your next interview. Those are little things you can do also to kind of get you re-energized for the next week of looking for work. The big thing is we want you to, recharge those batteries, get excited and enthusiastic about your job search, your game plan. You don't want to, approach your job search like, oh boy, here it is Sunday night, I got to go through this again. No, you have to have the opposite mindset, the energized, positive mindset about looking for work, because your energy level will come out in the interview, and you need to be able to be enthusiastic. You need to be able to be, someone who's, who's confident, who feels that they're, a good candidate for the job. Again, doing something to take your mind off of job search will help. Is very healthy. Okay, let's talk about networking. And it's very true what they say. It's not what you know, it's who you know that'll help you get your next job. Networking is very powerful. It's one of those, I call it still one of those hidden job market gems that I think more and more people are using it, but not everybody's using it. It's something that is very powerful. It can push you, if you know somebody, it can push you past the first gate and getting your resume read and maybe to the second gate, which is the interview, and potentially maybe into getting you hired. So networking is very, very powerful. As I mentioned when we were talking about informational interviews, you know, advocate for yourself, lobby for yourself, promote yourself at every opportunity you have. That's what networking is taking advantage of the people you know that surround you. Maybe it's folks you went to school with, high school or college. Maybe it's your friends. Maybe it's your professional contacts, people that you worked with in the past that you still stay in contact. Maybe it's your family, your brother, your sisters, your previous employers and employees that you worked with. It's a variety of different contacts that you can expand on this network, this web of connections that you have in your world. Sometimes we overlook people that could potentially be a part of our network. You know, for example, the mailman, his sister may work for a company that is looking for somebody with your qualifications. But because you don't, have that communication with the mailman, how is he going to know? So it's examples like that that we have to be very proactive in networking and broadening our web of connections and contacts that are out there. And again, when you talk and reach out to people, even if they tell you, no, I'm sorry, Ruben, I don't think of anybody right offhand, or I don't know anybody's hiring right offhand. Not to just accept that, go a little further. Well, can I give you my resume? Can you, do another company that you could point me to? Can I check back with you in a month or so and see how things are going with your company? It's always trying to push the envelope forward to your benefit with your networking. So it's very, very important that you look at all the contacts you have and taking advantage of them as you look for work. 85% of the positions are filled through networking. So remember that graph I showed you earlier that only 10% of the jobs are posted. 85% of jobs out there are filled by you going out there and talking to people and promoting yourself. So it's important that you take the time to do that. Again, a job is a life-altering event, and it requires that you put forth the effort, time, and energy into it. It isn't something you approach casually because the impact it has on your life is immense. So why not put the energy into it so that you direct the outcome in the direction that you want it to go? So networking, talk to people is the best way to tap into the hidden job market. Talk to your friends and family, even when you go to social events. Let people know what's going on. I mean, don't overdo it, clearly, but let people know that you feel comfortable about asking them for their help and helping you find a job. Again, I said play catch up with former employers and colleagues. Attend events related to your field. I know it's hard now to find these events, but there's a lot of them. Virtual events that are taking place that pertain to different industries, different careers. Some of these events, they have this pro match in Nova in Sunnyvale, and it's a huge networking event that takes place monthly. I'm pretty sure now it's virtual, but check out Nova in Sunnyvale. They have a networking event that they host every month. Definitely check out virtual recruitment events, talk to recruiters. It's a good way to kind of promote yourself and feel comfortable that promoting yourself with a stranger is when you're talking to a particular recruiter at a recruitment event. And you also get to network with other people that are looking for work. Again, here's an opportunity to advocate for yourself and try to make new connections. Again, don't be afraid to talk to anybody, everybody. I have here the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker, all these people. Sometimes you just don't know. You may take them for granted and assume they don't know anybody, but they just might have a relative, a friend that is looking for somebody with your qualifications. So seize those opportunities to, promote yourself and elicit their help in finding you and helping you find employment. Make sure your LinkedIn account reflects the kind of work that you want to do and that you've done. Make sure your LinkedIn is not a social media similar to Facebook. It's a professional media. It's designed to help promote your professional skill set that you have. So do what you can to make your LinkedIn account reflect your profession, your career. Share your information with others. Read articles about your industry, about your, the career that you want to get into, and share those articles with others in the industry on your LinkedIn account. If you're into sales, put in market projections for that product that you want to, with that company that you want to be a part of. Put it on your LinkedIn account, because employers will go to your LinkedIn account and will see the kind of stuff that's on there. If they see stuff that's compatible with your interest in applying for a job that they offer, then they're going to be more inclined to see that you're more genuine about your interest in working for them, because your LinkedIn account reflects it. So make sure your LinkedIn account is, current, relevant to your career and your employment needs, and maintain it on a regular basis. And it's another tool to use to reach out to people as well. And then research as much as you can about employers and companies that you're interested in working for. It's good to have that solid information on employers, that you can incorporate that information in your interview answers when you're interviewing. But it's also good to know, so that you can kind of make a solid decision about whether or not an employer is compatible with you and your, and what you're looking for in a job. So by doing your homework, you don't waste your time, and you don't waste their time in going to an interview only to discover that it wasn't a perfect match for you. And that's it. Do I have any questions that people have regarding interviewing?
So I don't have any questions right now from the last section, but just to maybe give people a couple minutes to process that, I will go ahead and mention that as we are finishing up this session, if you wanted to follow up or look into JobTrain further, you go to jobtrainworks.org or smcl.org's website. You would go to the services tab, and it's located in jobs and career resources. We have all kinds of different links that will redirect you to different places, whether you need resume help, interview help. If you are in a certain working group, such as veterans, we're going to have links that can help you with that regard as well. Yeah. All right, I'm still not seeing any questions, so I think perhaps there are none.
Well, I hope the information was useful and helpful as well for the people who attended today's event. So if you have any questions, you can visit jobtrainworks.org as well, and you can reach out to me, my staff, regarding your job search, inquiries that you have as well.
Sorry, I'm just receiving a message saying that it seems like there is a question, but I don't see it in the Q&A tab. So yeah, I do believe that there are no questions. So with that, I think we can go ahead and say thank you all for coming, and have a great afternoon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.